The saga unfolds with a legendary mark, passed down through generations of legendary heroes. Every so often, a descendant of the heroic bloodline is born lacking something, a limb, an emotion, or a sense. This time, it's Kunon, a boy who has never seen light, born without the gift of sight. From the moment of his birth, he carried the hero's scar, an absence revered in his lineage. In the esteemed Marquis Gurian household, this rare occurrence sparks awe among the maids and servants, as no child has borne the hero's scar in nearly a century. The royal family of Hulia is elated by Kunon's birth, and whispers of his future engagement to the ninth princess, Murica, further solidify the Gurian family's standing. With such a union, the Marquis' position is deemed unshakable. Yet despite the celebration surrounding him, Kunon feels an overwhelming sense of helplessness. Blind from birth, he is unable to see the faces of his loving parents, the warmth of his elder brother, or even the contrast between light and darkness. Upon discovering that the crest of water had appeared on him, granting him the power of sorcery, Kunon's parents wasted no time in securing a tutor to guide him in mastering magic. As he walks through the corridor, clutching the maid's hand, other servants glance at him with pity. They whisper sorrowfully about the young boy's blindness, expressing sympathy for one so small, and lamenting the need for his own annex and a dedicated maid even at home. The maid's concern deepens when Kunon suddenly stumbles, collapsing to the ground due to his blindness. Lying there, Kunon feels a wave of disappointment wash over him, indifferent to the crest of water, considered a revered hero's scar, because despite its significance, it doesn't change his reality. No matter how hard he tries, he still feels helpless, unable to navigate the world on his own. His thoughts drift back to Princess Murica, recalling how she once playfully hid behind a pillar. Though he called out and searched for her, he was left disheartened when he couldn't find her, a stark reminder of his limitations. During his magic lesson, Kunon carefully follows his tutor's guidance, crafting a small, irregular ball of water. Hoping it resembles the size of an eyeball, he anxiously asks if it matches. When his teacher gently informs him it does not, he feels disheartened. Noticing his disappointment, she immediately apologizes, filled with concern as she never meant to upset him. Guided by her instructions, Kunon places his hand on his own eye to understand its shape and size. As he does so, a thought strikes him. What if he could create an eye outside of his body? This exciting idea floods his mind, although it leaves his instructor puzzled. Kunon holds a ball of uneven water, still confused but inspired. He excitedly shares a new idea with his teacher. What if he could create his own eye using magic? This thought fills him with determination, realizing that one idea could lead to great change. He dreams of transforming the world through his magic. Later, during lunch, Kunon becomes suspicious of his sandwich, feeling like his sense of taste has changed. Curious, he asks his maid, Eiko, what he's eating. With a smile, Eiko tells him it's lettuce with mustard spread on the bread. Trying to be clever, Kunon jokes that he can feel the texture of an apple. Eiko, amused, corrects him, saying it's actually a plum, not an apple. Confused, Kunon asks for an explanation. He recalls his teacher's words that to sense objects through magic, he needs a sharp understanding and vivid memory of them. Her words leave Kunon thoughtful, knowing he still has a lot to learn. He tries to memorize the shape of the plum by feeling it with his fingers, recalling Sensei's advice that everyday objects can be valuable training tools. He realizes that without a clear understanding of his surroundings, creating an eye with magic will be nearly impossible. As he concentrates deeply, memorizing the shape, Eiko playfully teases him. In response, Kunon jokingly warns that if she continues making fun of him, she might face a pay cut. Eiko quickly apologizes, but still smiling, claps her hands and praises his water magic creation, keeping his paid cut joke in mind. Despite his best efforts, Kunon struggles to form a perfect water ball resembling an eyeball. Frustrated, beads of sweat form on his brow as he recalls Sensei's words about mastering control over his magic before achieving his goal. He tirelessly attempts to create water balls, knowing that mastering even basic magic like the water ball would signify great progress. Eiko, observing his dedication, claps in amazement and, with a grin, remarks on the uniqueness of the magic he is practicing, hoping to lift his spirits. However, Kunon's face remains clouded with disappointment as his water balls collapse. Concerned, Eiko tries to gauge his emotions, but soon feels relieved seeing him pick up his magic stick, ready to try again. His perseverance ignites hope in her heart. After multiple attempts, Eiko teases him with a happy tone, calling him a hardworking child. She even offers to assist him, but Kunon, visibly frustrated, firmly asks her to stop teasing, signaling his determination to succeed on his own. After a week of rigorous practice, Kunon lay hopelessly on the couch, sighing in defeat, telling Eiko that his efforts aren't enough. Eiko, in dramatic disbelief, teasingly asks if he's claiming her boundless love and affection aren't sufficient. Annoyed, he clears the misunderstanding, assuring her that her love is more than enough, but explains with a sad exhale that it's his powers and knowledge that fall short. He expresses his gut feeling that he simply doesn't have enough stamina for magic. Eiko tries to motivate him, reminding him that he's only 7 years old with his mind and body still growing. However, Kunon, lying on the couch, confuses her by lamenting that he's growing too slowly. He sorrowfully adds that his lack of magic power and stamina causes him to stumble. When Eiko encourages him again, mentioning that he doesn't eat much and a body without sufficient food stays small, he glumly points out that even his body isn't enough. Suddenly, he stands with renewed determination, thinking that either his week-long magical practice has drained his stamina or casting sorcery 2 or 3 times is making him breathless. Regardless, he vows never to give up. Eiko continues cheering him on, despite his struggles and eventual tears, but Kunon remains motivated to create eyes with magic. 2 months later at sorcery school, teacher Jenny is astonished to see Kunon conjure 6 perfectly formed water spheres with his magical staff. She recalls hearing the rumor 2 months ago when Kunon's water crest manifested that he was attending classes too early. Now seeing him perform flawlessly, she realizes it was all true. Jenny asks him to produce more, and as Kunon effortlessly creates 7 perfectly shaped eyeballs with magic, her amazement grows. After class, Jenny rests her head on the table, deeply worried. The water spheres Kunon created were nearly perfect uniform, with barely any tremors. It was an extraordinary level of precision for such basic magic, and he was able to maintain 7 balls at once. Her concern stems from the fact that Kunon is only 7 years old, and this magic, though useful, is potentially dangerous. Even a child could harm an adult with it. Feeling conflicted, Jenny reflects on her role as his teacher. She was supposed to teach him only the basics, but Kunon has far surpassed that. Despite her concerns about his safety, she knows this job is her life, so she can't simply stop now. Looking at her magic staff, she decides to test Kunon further. If he continues to advance at this pace within a year or even 6 months, he might become one of the most powerful sorcerers in the world, the legendary Blue Sorcerer. Princess Mirica Huglia, the 9th princess of the Huglia Kingdom, is on her way to visit her fiancé, Kunon, of the prestigious House of Gurion. Their engagement, arranged around the time Kunon awakened his magical abilities, has led to routine meetings every 2 weeks. But today, as Mirica rides in her royal carriage toward his estate, a deep reluctance weighs on her. Although both she and Kunon understand their duty in this political alliance, the memory of his frail and lifeless appearance haunts her, making the thought of seeing him again unbearable. She recalls how she often avoided him in the past because of the discomfort his presence brought, and now, after a 2-month break due to his declining health, the idea of facing him feels even more daunting. Her anxious thoughts are interrupted by a gentle knock from her guard, announcing their arrival at the Gurion villa. As she steps out of the carriage, Mirica is met with an unexpected sight. Kunon, standing tall, his hand over his heart, greeting her with a radiant smile. His warm and sincere apology for their time apart leaves her speechless. His transformation is so striking that, for a moment, she wonders if it's simply a trick of makeup or something more. Mirica's mind drifts to Eiko's playful remarks about her charm, humorously admitting that if she were an older man, she wouldn't be able to resist her. Mirica brushes the thought aside, realizing Eiko's chatter is as lively as ever. Curiosity gnaws at Mirica. With her heart racing, she cautiously asks Kunon if something extraordinary has happened during their time apart. With a gentle smile, he admits that his sorcery training has made significant progress and once again apologizes for the worry he caused her. He then makes a heartfelt request for her to listen to him today. Intrigued and moved by his change, Mirica agrees, and hand in hand, they walk toward the seating area, ready to explore this new chapter in their relationship. As Mirica settles into her chair, Eiko stands nearby, watching as Kunon hands her a small sphere of water, created through Aore magic. Mirica eyes the sphere with a mix of curiosity and confusion. Kunon explains that while it looks like a simple water ball, it has several intricate modifications. Noticing her bewilderment, Kunon recounts a recent lesson with his teacher, Jenny, which took place with Eiko as a witness. Jinei had instructed him to attempt something different from his usual training, explaining that Aori magic is the first spell most water sorcerers learn, summoning water in its purest form. To illustrate her point, Jinei had split a cookie in half, delighting in the lesson, and asked Kunon to identify the properties of the spell. Under her guidance, Kunon analyzed the characteristics of Aori magic, realizing it not only creates water but also controls its levitation and maintains its perfect shape. Jenny, adding to the lesson, swirled her fingers through the water, creating ripples, and revealed that the spell holds far more complexity than just temperature and shape. She hinted that deeper layers of this magic, starting with the letter A, contain hidden properties yet to be uncovered. Jenny had created 2 water spheres, each encircled by gentle waves, and asked Kunon to touch them. He was surprised to find that one felt cold while the other was warm, even though the same spell created both. Jinei explained that this subtle manipulation is the essence of sorcery. Small variations can lead to significant differences. It was a vital lesson Kunon had taken to heart. When Kunon shares his newfound knowledge with Princess Mirika, she initially thinks he's teasing her. But he explains that while many magicians cast the same spells, royal sorcerers add a unique touch. She is even more astonished when Kunon casually mentions his recent experiment of tasting water, with Aiko as his taste tester. Laughing, Aiko offers Mirika a sip of the magically enhanced water, and to her amazement, it tastes incredibly delicious. Aiko further explains that when the magic fades, the taste either disappears or becomes unpleasant. Fascinated by these revelations, Mirika watches as Kunon conjures 2 small water orbs, his playful smile lighting up the moment. He admits how much fun he is having with magic, revealing that the more he practices, the more feedback he gets. As she observes his renewed energy and charm, Mirika's cheeks flush, captivated by his presence. Her heart skips a beat when, out of nowhere, a brilliant rainbow appears above them. Kunon, just as surprised, grins and explains that the mist from the split water has formed the rainbow. Deeply impressed, Mirika listens as he humbly admits that all of this progress has come from just 2 months of intense training. As Mirika heads back to her castle, she feels a wave of happiness. Her time with Kunon-kun has been genuinely enjoyable, and the thought of waiting another 2 weeks to see him again fills her with both excitement and frustration. Back at the Gurian household, Aiko is left speechless when Kunon reveals something unexpected. With a look of confusion, he admits that, although he cannot fully see, he has begun to sense blurry shapes. Aiko bombards him with questions, doubting his claim, but Kunon, visibly frustrated, asks her to stop. He explains that while his vision isn't clear, he feels like he's beginning to perceive something. To demonstrate, Kunon picks up an apple and asks if it's red. When Aiko denies it, he grabs another apple and confidently declares it blue. To Aiko's amazement, this apple turns out to be red. Laughing, she explains that Kunon isn't correctly matching colors to their names. The apple he believes is blue is actually light green. Playfully, she challenges him to identify the colors of several apples on the table. To her shock, Kunon accurately names 3 red and 2 white apples. Overwhelmed with excitement, she grabs his shoulders in disbelief. Despite this progress, he remains unsatisfied. While he finds joy in sensing colors, he longs for full vision. Ever supportive, Aiko reminds him that his current achievements are nothing short of incredible. She then decides to inform Arsene Gurian, the head of the Gurian family, about Kunon's progress. When Aiko explains Kunon's newfound ability to differentiate colors, Arsene is both stunned and amazed. Aiko clarifies that while Kunon's color vision is still limited, he can clearly distinguish hues. In disbelief, Arsene asks if Kunon can read. Aiko explains that while Kunon can perceive objects more clearly up close, he often needs to touch them to understand them better. She also shares that he has been studying images in books and field guides, engrossed in recognizing visual details. Concerned, Arsene asks if Kunon intends to return to the main family residence. Initially, they had arranged for him to live elsewhere to avoid his mother's overprotectiveness. Smiling thoughtfully, Aiko suggests that a sudden change in Kunon's environment could hinder his remarkable progress. Frustrated with Kunon's persistent quest for full vision, Arsene apologizes to Aiko for the burden his care places on her. However, Aiko brushes it off with a grin, jokingly asking for a pay raise instead of an apology. As time passes, both Kunon and Aiko continue their routine. 2 years later, now 9 years old, he smiles as he thanks Aiko for delivering another set of documents, signaling yet another step in his relentless journey to master both magic and sight. As Kunon showcases his extraordinary abilities, his mentor, Oro Toro, the esteemed former master of the East Tiger School of Swordsmanship, looks on with pure delight. He commends Kunon's transformation, remarking that his muscles have reached an impeccable level of refinement, making him a near unbeatable force among his peers. With humble grace, he thanks Auro for his admiration, noting that these past 2 years of relentless training have shaped not just his body, but his growth as a person. Amidst the quiet task of organizing books on the shelves, Aiko, full of curiosity, asks if Kunon-sama has uncovered anything particularly captivating during his intense practice. Kunon, clutching a book with excitement, eagerly lists several arcane arts that have captured his imagination: water divination, firelight scrying, crystal membranes, glass barriers, demon contracts, and even the enchanting rainbow fish, along with countless other mystical marvels. Intrigued, Aiko eagerly asks if divination means fortune-telling, and Kunon nods with a smile, explaining the intricacies of water-based divination. He reveals that one must fill a magically imbued vessel with water, allowing it to display whatever the observer seeks, whether it's lost items, glimpses of the future, or distant visions. Amazed, she is stunned by the sheer potential of this magic, realizing that with such divination he could easily uncover the lost spark of her youth or perhaps even reclaim the innocence she feels has slipped away. But with a serene smile and a soothing gaze, Kunon reassures her, reminding her with warm confidence that she's still in the radiant bloom of her youth. With a playful laugh and a dramatic gesture, placing her hand over her face, Aiko teases Kunon, claiming she's getting older. Kunon, with a warm smile, compliments her beauty, which leaves her puzzled. She jokes about how he can admire her when he can't even see her properly. Despite this, she feels a sense of joy, her face slightly blushing, and with playful curiosity, she asks him to use his divination powers to find her husband. Kunon, smiling, admits that she's an exceptional woman whom no man could easily overlook. However, with a hint of disappointment, he confesses that if he weren't the second son of a marquess, he would have wished for her to be his wife. Aiko immediately teases him, laughing as she reminds him that she's a decade older than him. As their light-hearted conversation flows, they are interrupted by Kunon's teacher, who apologizes deeply as it's time for his class. Observing Kunon, she muses that he's a brilliant student. They settle into their chairs, with Aiko, as always, standing dutifully behind him as his personal maid. After a few minutes of lecture, the teacher, with a satisfied smile, concludes the lesson, recalling that she began tutoring Kunon at his request to help him connect with Mirika-sama. As his governess, she also taught him the finer aspects of aristocratic conduct. After class, Kunon orders Aiko to bring black tea for both him and his teacher, Frau Sensei. Aiko returns with a smile, teasing him that, at this rate, she'll shape him into a gentleman with a sharp sense of humor. His mentor watches, thinking that Aiko knows how to playfully seize opportunities with her charming words. As Frau looks at Kunon, she finds him delightful. She never grows bored in his company, and he carries a natural charm, though perhaps she had only seen him on a surface level. Kunon, expressionless, raises his cup of tea in a silent toast to the teacher, who smiles warmly. Despite his stoic demeanor, she recognizes his serious nature. Yet she knows that beneath that, he has changed dramatically from the withdrawn boy she first met 2 years ago. Now, as his mentor, she feels a deep sense of happiness, seeing how much sweeter and brighter he has become. As Kunon takes a sip of his coffee, he gracefully compliments his sensei, noting with a charming grin that the brew is a 12-year-old delicacy from the New Kingdom, perfectly fitting for a radiant teacher like her, with its alluring fragrance. However, Farala is momentarily puzzled as Aiko, with her usual cheerful spirit, interrupts to playfully correct him, stating that the coffee is actually a cherished product of Huglia, their homeland. Later, during dinner, Aiko informs Kunon-sama that his master has called him. After some reflection, they agreed to visit him after their meal. As they depart from the castle and stroll toward the master's quarters, Kunon feels a hint of anxiety, wondering if he's in trouble. But as the night air envelops them, his thoughts shift. Aiko, holding a glowing lantern in her delicate hands, asks him to conjure his signature water magic spheres for warmth. Without hesitation, he expertly crafts perfectly round, shimmering spheres of heated water. Aiko touches them, her face lighting up with delight as she giggles at their comforting warmth and playful bounce. With a reassuring smile, she tells him he likely hasn't done anything to anger the master. She teasingly commends him for learning his lesson from the infamous seed-to-blood incident. Then, with a mischievous twinkle in her eye, she claims she's upset because she wasn't involved at all. Kunon, quick to respond, tries to set the record straight, reminding her that it was she who encouraged him to experiment, making her fully responsible for the chaos. In his eyes, she had always urged him to push his limits, no matter the cost. As they continue their light-hearted banter, they finally reach his father's residence. At the gate, the guard greets them with a deep bow, showing respect for their arrival. Escorting them into the majestic main hall, the guard announces their presence to the master. With rising intrigue, Kunon turns to his father and curiously asks why he had been called. His curiosity only deepens when he notices his mother and older brother seated beside his father, their expressions adding an air of mystery to the summons. When Kunon spots his elder brother, Ixio Gurion, Ixio joyfully greets him, astonished that Kunon recognizes him despite never having seen him before. Their mother, Teneriza Gurion, beams with delight at Kunon's arrival, clearly overjoyed. After they settle down, Kunon's father, with an air of curiosity, questions him about completing the noble school curriculum. He's surprised since Kunon had no plans to attend before. Kunon explains that he avoided it earlier because he would have been too distracted by his surroundings. Understanding this, his father, now serious, informs him that arrangements have been made to officially affiliate Kunon with the noble school, though he's been granted special permission by the king. With a grave tone, his father adds that something else may no longer be necessary, giving Kunon time to reflect on the matter. However, Kunon misunderstands, thinking his father is referring to his allowance. Apologizing with hands clasped, Kunon admits he knows his father complains about his spending. But he reassures him that his schooling and training are purposeful and not a waste of money. He expresses gratitude for his father's hard work. The atmosphere becomes filled with confusion as Kunon continues. Teneriza, with a gentle smile, steps in to soothe Kunon, explaining that his father isn't talking about his allowance. His father then reveals that the topic is actually about Princess Mirica, his fiancée. He stresses that as her noble fiancée, it's Kunon's responsibility to fulfill his obligations. He warns that nobles who neglect their duties or act unbefittingly are often ridiculed in high society. He pointedly asks how Kunon would feel if Princess Mirica were mocked because of him. His parents then tell Kunon that he's now ready to fulfill his duties as a noble child. When Kunon innocently asks if going to school is part of his duties, his father explains that he won't need to attend school anymore, just pass the promotion exams. He clarifies that noble children usually go to school from ages 6 to 14 but can graduate by passing these exams. Some do it quickly, while others take their time. Kunon realizes that passing the exams means skipping school. His father mentions that there are 5 promotion exams and that Ixio, his brother, is preparing for the next one to graduate. Kunon is excited to hear that Ixio is already close to finishing, and Ixio adds that Princess Mirica is also taking the same exam and will likely graduate with him. Later, when Kunon tells Princess Mirica that he'll be attending school with her, she's thrilled at the idea of spending their school days together. Still unsure about school, Kunon is reassured when Mirica promises to take care of everything. Teasing her, he jokes that her admirers will be jealous if they spend too much time together. Flustered, Mirica replies that she's quite popular and even needs guards to keep her many admirers at bay. As Kunon gets ready for school, Eiko watches him with admiration. With a mask covering his eyes, he resembles a prince from a fairy tale. When Ixio arrives to fetch them, he notices Kunon and Eiko chatting. Kunon playfully presses a finger to his lips, pretending as if his true identity had just been discovered. He jokingly apologizes for keeping secrets, and the two of them share a laugh. Ixio, observing the moment, can't help but wonder if his little brother had always been this witty. As they settle into the royal carriage, their mother, Teneriza, waves them off with tears of pride in her eyes, reminding them to travel safely. It's an emotional moment for her to see both her sons heading to school together. Ixio is impressed when Kunon uses his Aori magic to create a comfortable environment inside the carriage. With a smile, he waves back to his mother, while his brother, curious about the sorcery, remarks on how useful it seems. Kunon, smiling, responds that this magic has practical uses, and who knows, it might even help him land a job in the future. Ixio mentally agrees, but then shifts the topic, asking if Kunon is nervous about his first day. Calmly, Kunon reassures him that while being unable to see might be challenging, he's not worried. Seeing his brother still concerned, Kunon adds that he has grown stronger and apologizes for the times he caused Ixio to worry by getting hurt. Ixio, once burdened by guilt, finally feels relieved when Kunon admits that though he once wished for death, now he is determined to live no matter what. Hearing these words, Ixio feels comforted, recognizing that his brother has indeed changed, likely thanks to his newfound mastery of sorcery. Ixio anxiously laughs as Kunon playfully declares that even if society crumbles, he will endure, keeping his spirits high. He jokingly apologizes, saying he'll live so long that he might feel sorry for the rest of humanity. Ixio realizes that his brother's carefree and lively nature was always there, though it's clear that his maid played a part in bringing it out. When they arrive at school, Kunon steps out of the vehicle and immediately greets Murica with a cheerful good morning as she waits for them. He playfully compliments her, saying that hearing her voice in the morning makes him feel lucky. She smiles and compliments his necktie, but Kunon, holding it up, teasingly asks if it's cuter than her. Blushing, she denies it, and Kunon, smiling, says he's relieved, joking that he would have torn it off if it had been cuter than her. Ixio watches their playful exchange and finds it truly charming. As they begin to walk, Kunon offers his hand to Murica, joking that she should play the gentleman since the place is crowded with people and spirits, and it's his first time in such a bustling environment. With a laugh, she agrees, taking his hand and playing along. They walk hand in hand, and Kunon encourages Ixio to follow. Just then, Professor Cast approaches, declaring that it's time to begin. Upon seeing her, Murica greets her with a polite good morning. The professor recalls her meeting with the headmaster, where she was instructed to give Kunon a guided tour of the school. At first she was nervous, expressing her concerns since she was only in her second year of teaching and just a baroness, while Kunon was the second son of a marquis. The headmaster assured her that class distinctions didn't matter at the school, and that Kunon, being blind and a bit shy, would need extra attention. Now, as Professor Cast observes Kunon, she wonders if this responsibility is more than she bargained for. She's surprised to see girls admiring Kunon and whispering about his eye patch, their fascination apparent. Lost in thought, she's startled when Murica, still holding Kunon's hand, walks past her. Quickly recovering, Cast introduces herself to Kunon. He, with a smile, warmly greets her, holding his magic staff with confidence. Professor Cast is taken aback, finding Kunon far more self-assured than the timid boy she had expected. Kunon throws Professor Cast into confusion when, with a playful, girlish tone, he declares that though he's biologically a boy, at this moment he's a very cute girl. Her unease is somewhat relieved when Ixio leans in and whispers that they're simply playing a game, so there's no need to worry. Though still slightly baffled, Professor Cast informs Murica-san that she'll be guiding him from now on. Waving goodbye, Murica promises to meet them for lunch, while Cast, still pondering the challenge ahead, wonders if taking care of Kunon will be more difficult than she initially thought. When they reach the special classroom, Professor Cast asks Kunon if he needs any explanations. He confidently states that he understands the system. If he can pass the promotion tests, he'll graduate. She confirms and explains that most students graduate within 3 to 5 years, and that the exams are designed to assess what students have learned over the past 6 months to a year. She reassures Kunon that passing the tests won't be too hard if he listens in class, but warns him that failing means waiting a month before retaking it. When she asks if he understands, Kunon explains that he fully grasps the system. If he passes, he moves on. If not, he'll need to wait. Professor Cast tells him that, unlike most students who have to wait several days between exams, he can take them daily because of special arrangements made by his father and the king, who are close friends. Feeling a little embarrassed, Kunon bows and apologizes for any pressure their influence might cause. With a gentle smile, she reassures him, pretending not to acknowledge the political connections, and advises him to focus on the exam. She asks if he has any last-minute questions and reminds him he can ask during the test if needed. Before leaving, she reminds him not to drag his teachers into any political issues, then instructs him to begin. After Kunon finishes the exam, the head professor enters the room. Once Professor Cast confirms that everything is in order, he grants her permission to take a lunch break, handing her Kunon's answer sheet. She thanks him and leaves, but unable to resist her curiosity, quickly skims through his answers. To her amazement, every answer is correct. Relieved and impressed, she reflects on how Kunon maintained casual conversation throughout the test. Noticing that his handwriting is even more elegant than hers, she feels an unexpected mix of admiration and awe toward him, as Kunon finds spending time with Princess Murica to be delightful. After 3 days of enjoying each other's company at school, they head back to class after lunch. As he praises the meal, Murica playfully asks about his test, creating a sense of calm in their everyday life. However, this peaceful moment is interrupted when they suddenly encounter Lyle Oni-sama, Murica's older brother. Lyle, with an angry expression, demands to know if Kunon is her fiancé. But before Mirika can answer, Ixio, with a cheerful and respectful tone, politely asks Lyle if he needs anything. Infuriated, Lyle yells at Ixio for daring to speak without permission, especially as a member of the Gurian family. Kunon remains silent but finds Lyle's attitude incredibly rude. Ixio calmly explains the school's rules, emphasizing that social status doesn't matter here. Just then, they all freeze in shock as Kunon points out that Lyle has wet his pants. Lyle looks down in utter disbelief, furiously denying that he did such a thing. Confused and angry, he hastily retreats after one of his gang members whispers that this isn't the right place to argue. As Lyle and his entourage leave, Mirika and Ixio turn to Kunon, knowing he must have used magic. Kunon simply grins, having secretly manipulated invisible water balls to soak Lyle's pants. When Ixio asks if he was responsible for the prank, Kunon smoothly changes the subject with a smile, asking both of them what they want for lunch and declaring that he's craving a hamburger. Mirika, amused, agrees with him, knowing there's no point in arguing since her brother's behavior was truly obnoxious. While savoring his hamburger, Kunon curiously asks Mirika about Lyle. She calmly explains that Lyle is her elder brother, the sixth prince, Lyle Huglia. Kunon, stunned, can hardly believe it, questioning if he's truly her brother. With a casual expression, Mirika clarifies that although they have different mothers, they are officially siblings by royal blood. Still in shock and embarrassment, Kunon struggles to comprehend, thinking a brother should treasure his little sister. To confirm, he turns to Ixio, who, with a heavy heart, confirms the truth. Realizing he may have wronged her brother, Kunon apologizes sincerely, knowing he acted out of loyalty to Ixio, whom he sees as a brother figure too. Puzzled, Kunon wonders aloud why Lyle hides his violent temper, yet confronted them so rudely. Ixio, in the midst of enjoying his beef stew and salad, suddenly halts Kunon as if he'd just uttered something forbidden. Confused, Kunon listens as Mirika, with a somber tone, reveals that Lyle's hostility stems from her rising status. He came to keep her in line. Kunon is visibly angered but remains silent, as Mirika elaborates that Kunon, as her fiancé, has elevated her standing in the royal family due to his heroic scars in sorcery. With a hint of sorrow, she confesses that while she'd be glad if that were the only issue, she feels guilty for placing Kunon in the spotlight. She adds that Lyle's resentment grows because her elevated position now threatens to surpass his. As Kunon finally understands the depth of the situation, Mirika reassures him, saying there's no need to worry, for the crown prince and higher successors have tighter ties, and neither she nor Lyle holds as much weight in the grander royal scheme. Kunon, realizing how intricate the royal family politics are, admits he has little interest in their affairs. Watching them sip their coffee, Kunon suddenly shocks both Mirika and Ixio by declaring he wants to apologize to Lyle. Startled, they immediately shout for him to abandon the idea, knowing it's best for them to avoid any further confrontation. On the 5th day of school, the trio enters the classroom, finding it filled with eager students. Ixio informs Kunon that around 20 students will be taking the graduation exam at the same time. Kunon learns that, due to the limited number of teachers, it's more efficient to hold the exam collectively, unlike his one-on-one test with Professor Cast. Mirika, however, beams with excitement, thrilled that they'll all be in the same room for the exams. Kunon, on the other hand, looks disheartened, explaining to them that if he takes the exam this way, he won't be able to personally show Professor Cast his answers anymore. With a warm smile, he reassures them by sharing that he and Professor Cast had a long conversation about her life. She revealed that she became a teacher because of a man she loved at the academy. Unfortunately, he failed the exam while she passed, leaving her to teach alone for the past 2 years. With a mischievous grin, Kunon playfully suggests that Ixio should try to win her over, as she's accepting boyfriend applications. Ixio, amused, chuckles and responds that if the mood strikes him, he might just take Kunon's advice. As the three of them chat and laugh, the other students watch with admiration. Some ask Mirika to introduce her fiancé, while others, casting fond looks at Kunon, ask Ixio to introduce them to his younger brother, whom they find more charming. The girls, after a closer look, even declare Kunon cuter than Ixio. Amid all the attention, Kunon clears his throat and, with a polite smile, introduces himself as Ixio's younger brother from the Gurian family. With a relaxed grin, he admits he's relieved, joking that he was starting to worry since Mirika and Ixio had never introduced him to anyone before, making him think they had no friends. His comment gets an immediate reaction. Ixio, annoyed, shouts that it's rude to assume such a thing, especially about Princess Mirika. She also scolds him, saying it's offensive to think they had no friends. With an annoyed look, she sternly tells the other students to leave them alone, as she's spending time with him. As the students disperse, many giggle and call Kunon cute, to which he responds by thanking them for their kindness. Kunon, now addressing Mirika and his brother, expresses how he had genuinely worried they might not have friends and how he couldn't bring himself to ask them directly. But now, realizing they're not alone, he feels a wave of relief. Covering his face with his hands, Kunon shows his joy, admitting how happy he is that Ixio and Princess have companions, and that he no longer has to worry about comforting them. Mirika, smiling, gently reassures him not to fret, laughing at how typical it is for him to be so concerned. Kunon joins in, laughing along and remarking that humans are surprisingly okay, even when they seem alone. Mirika chuckles, already predicting he'd say something like that. Their light-hearted conversation takes a sudden turn when Lyle approaches them from behind. The atmosphere shifts as he glares angrily at Mirika, while Kunon, oblivious to the tension, happily grabs Lyle's hand, introducing himself as her fiancé. He, confused and visibly embarrassed, listens as Kunon enthusiastically greets him, apologizing for not doing so earlier. As Kunon praises his magnificent voice and face, even lamenting that if he could see clearly, he'd stare at it intensely, Lyle's embarrassment grows. In a fit of frustration, Lyle yells at Kunon to let go of his hand. Meanwhile, the other students laugh, and even Mirika can't contain her amusement. With a playful wink, she apologizes, explaining that seeing Lyle so flustered is strangely funny to her. Despite his protest, Lyle insists he's not embarrassed, though the scene suggests otherwise. Their conversation is abruptly interrupted as the teacher enters, announcing the exam results. The entire class erupts in applause as the teacher congratulates everyone for passing. Clapping alongside Mirika, Kunon feels a sense of joy and satisfaction, reflecting on how his 5 days of school ended smoothly, without any major incidents. While Kunon enjoys a coffee meeting with Ginny Sensei, she warmly congratulates him on his graduation. As they talk, he grows increasingly curious when she mentions that this moment is a good opportunity for her to reveal something important. His anticipation heightens when she warns him to brace himself for shocking news. With a jolt, Kunon jokingly asks if she's about to confess that she's the goddess of the night sky and now must return to the realm of the gods. However, with a sorrowful expression, she clarifies that although she wishes that were the case, he's entirely mistaken. After a few moments of contemplation, her gaze drops sadly, and she finally reveals the truth. There is nothing more she can teach him. Kunon, confused, listens intently as she admits that she had considered quitting her job once or twice because she felt inadequate as a teacher. She explains, with guilt weighing heavily on her words, that for quite some time, she's been unable to truly teach him anything. Furthermore, she shares that Kunon's father had prohibited her from instructing him in highly aggressive sorcery. Given those restrictions, she has taught him everything within her ability, and he now wields sorcery with incredible skill. Upon hearing this, Kunon bursts out passionately, denying her claim that she failed to teach him. He insists that despite her so-called unfair tricks, which she used in desperation to challenge him, he admired them deeply. He explains that those clever ploys, even though they seemed bothersome, helped him broaden his sorcery range significantly. She is stunned to realize that Kunon had been aware of her tactics all along. He then loudly exclaims that her petty tricks taught him valuable lessons, guiding him toward his true goal and giving him a reason to delve deeper into the abyss of sorcery. Her efforts had not been in vain. Feeling moved by his words, she urges him to stop calling her methods unfair if he genuinely appreciated her efforts. With great emotion, she admits that she had desperately used every trick in the book to teach him, despite her own struggles over the past 2 years to keep up the facade. She confesses that it was an exhausting time, but in the end, she's proud of what he's achieved. With a burst of energy, Kunon suddenly stands up, thinking that she is planning to quit her job due to a low salary. However, she quickly stops him, clarifying that he's completely misunderstanding her intentions. She firmly states that even if he were to raise her salary, she still wouldn't stay. Yet Kunon insists, saying he will speak to his father to ensure her pay is increased. Jeannie, exasperated, informs him that offering more money is merely addressing the surface of a deeper issue. Gently placing a hand on his shoulder, she calmly advises him to seek out a true specialist, a sorcerer far more skilled than herself, because she can no longer help him grow or guide him to greater heights. She then encourages herself by admitting that if she has pushed beyond her own limits to help him, it means she has done well in training him. She goes on to explain that over the past year, she used every trick she knew, but now those efforts have reached their limits. However, Kunon, with hopeful eyes, pleads with her to continue using the same clever tricks she employed before. But Sensei gently denies his request, calmly reminding him that she has already given all she can. She further points out the advanced Aori creature he created, which far surpasses anything she could have taught him. Despite the heartfelt exchange, Kunon still struggles to let go of the hope that she will keep guiding him, but her resolve remains firm. He's ready for a bigger challenge. Iko, standing by Kunon's side, feels powerless as Kunon, frustrated, nearly shouts that he actually enjoys her so-called petty tricks. Sensei cuts him off, reminding him not to call them unfair if he truly likes them. Seeing his strong desire to continue learning from her, she begins to understand. Like all the dedicated students she's met, Kunon is relentless in his efforts. She remembers their first meeting when she warned him that mistakes are part of mastering sorcery, and he took it to heart, working hard to overcome every challenge. In a moment of reflection, she realizes that while her small tricks may have seemed insignificant, they played a role in helping him grow stronger. She silently praises herself for never wanting to fall behind her own student. With that thought, she picks up her bag and decides to visit her own teacher, realizing that even though she still has room to learn. After Sensei leaves, Kunon sips his tea, holding his magically crafted cat. Eiko reflects on how, despite Jenny-sama being an average student at the Sorcery Academy, she was the perfect teacher for him. Kunon leans back and agrees, acknowledging her as an excellent mentor. When Eiko asks if he truly appreciated Jenny's unfair tricks, he confirms it. He explains that despite her reluctance, she spent over a year inventing clever challenges for him. To Kunon, that persistence was her real strength, and her ability to use such creative methods in teaching was a rare gift. Slouching further in his chair, he adds that he had told Jenny-sensei countless times he wanted her to stay. Frustrated, he mutters under his breath, and Iko, laughing playfully, teases that she didn't hear him say it clearly. Then, with a mischievous smile, she asks him to calm down and hold back on his dramatic reactions. Changing the subject, he sadly mentions that Sensei is also resigning. Iko, with sudden realization, expresses disappointment, remarking that she left without even bidding them farewell. She surmises that Sama likely avoided a goodbye to spare herself from crying and probably informed Kunon's father instead. Sighing deeply, Kunon contemplates writing a thank you letter to Sensei, but before he can linger on the thought, Eiko, filled with enthusiasm, shifts the conversation again. She excitedly suggests asking his father for a male servant from the garden estate, aged 18 to 25, as a prospective marriage partner for her. Kunon, feigning exaggerated frustration, holds his cat and loudly complains, exclaiming that she's going to marry a servant and abandon him. Iko, with calm resolve, replies that although parting from him will be difficult, she is determined to get married now. As Kunon grips the arms of his chair tightly, Eiko reassures him that she no longer has to worry about him, as he's now capable of managing everything on his own. With a melancholic expression, he laments that with Jenny and Sensei both gone, he couldn't bear the thought of losing Eiko too. He even references the old saying that rabbits die from loneliness. Iko, with a gentle smile, reassures him that it's just a superstition and nothing to worry about. But Kunon, sighing sadly, says if he were a rabbit, he wouldn't die from loneliness, but as Kunon-sama, it would surely be his downfall. With a playful chuckle, Eiko brushes off his comment as a whimsical joke and reminds him of their upcoming tea time. Then, turning serious, she insists he talk to his father about her future husband. Kunon, however, instantly refuses. Moments later, while absorbed in his book, he suddenly realizes he needs a new sorcery mentor, just as Jenny-sensei had suggested. Turning to Iko for advice, she excitedly suggests the Royal Palace sorcerer Zeonli Finroll-sama, known for both his unmatched skills and striking good looks. She urges Kunon to ask his father to make Zeonli his new teacher. However, when Kunon expresses a preference for a female mentor, Iko grows annoyed and warns him against being so picky, reminding him that Zeonli is a highly respected sorcerer. When Kunon teasingly mentions another female sorcerer, Iko, now frustrated, threatens to tell Mirika about his fixation on female teachers. Realizing the trouble he might be in, he quickly tries to backtrack, joking about an elderly female sorcerer instead. But Aiko, exasperated, scolds him, saying that age doesn't matter, a woman is still a woman, and criticizes him for treating them differently based on age, reminding him this isn't proper for a gentleman. Sensing her frustration, he stops teasing and agrees, accepting that the dynamics between a man and a woman can be unpredictable, even if she's as old as a grandmother. He then suggests that Aiko talks to his father about the situation. Later, during dinner, Kunon brings up Jenny Sensei's departure and his need for a new sorcery teacher to continue his training. After finishing his meal, his father agrees to find a suitable replacement. With an innocent expression, Kunon suggests Zunli Finroll-sama, noting that he would be an ideal teacher. His father immediately dismisses the idea, but his mother and brother exchange excited glances. His mother eagerly mentions the rumors about Zunli's renowned handsomeness, which even Ixio is aware of. However, Kunon's father anxiously makes an excuse. Kunon, with wide, innocent eyes, reminds his father that he could easily arrange for Zunli to become his teacher, given his close ties to the king. Irritated, Kunon's father calls him for a private talk, explaining that royal sorcerers, like military officers, serve only within the palace, and only the king or their direct superiors can command them. Zunli is bound to the palace, making it nearly impossible for him to leave and teach someone outside. Undeterred, Kunon devises a clever plan. He suggests accompanying his father to the palace, pretending to get lost, and conveniently meeting a royal sorcerer who might offer to help, allowing him to become their student. Though his father is skeptical, Kunon turns to his mother for support. Fondly recalling how she used to spoil him, she smiles warmly and gently asks her husband to help. Reluctantly, his father agrees to speak with the king but warns them not to expect much. Both brothers grin, knowing how easily they can sway their parents. At the royal palace, Mirika is thrilled as she reads the letter announcing Kunon's visit, while her personal maid, Laura, appears more serious. When Laura asks if Kunon-sama is visiting because of her, Mirika becomes flustered and unsure. But after carefully checking the letter, she informs Laura that he is coming to take a simple test, and if he passes, he'll be introduced to a sorcery professor. She wonders if he will make time to see her. Sensing her lady's anxiety, Laura suggests Mirika write him a letter, inviting him for tea after his exam. However, she remains worried, fearing he might refuse. With a playful wink, Laura tries to reassure her, joking that if Kunon refuses, it might just be because he thought he should have been the one to invite her instead. Despite the light-hearted remark, Mirika's concern lingers, hinting at her growing affection for him. In an attempt to calm Mirika's nerves, Laura respectfully advises her to clear things up by sending the letter. Yet Mirika, with a sorrowful expression, confesses that she would start crying if Kunon rejected her. She urges Laura not to dismiss her feelings, but relaxes somewhat when Laura suggests a plan to help her stay composed around the third and fourth princesses. As Mirika pens her letter, she voices her worry that news of Kunon's visit to the capital might already be widely known. Laura shares the concern, acknowledging that rumors about his potential connection to a royal sorcerer have already spread. Realizing the difficulty of controlling information, Mirika decides to handle the situation as best she can, despite knowing that, as the ninth princess, she is at a disadvantage. They both agree that it wouldn't be surprising if Kunon's travel itinerary had also been leaked, though Laura reassures her that not many people are aware of his true abilities, which might keep the attention on him minimal. After finishing her letter, Mirika entrusts Laura to deliver it to Kunon, while she goes to see Lisha Oni-sama. Meanwhile, inside a royal carriage, Kunon sits with a blindfold on, smiling as he teasingly asks his father if he has any idea what life has in store for him. His father, surprised, remarks that he never imagined a day would come when they'd be heading to the royal palace together. Deep down, he is astounded by the thought of his son possibly becoming an apprentice to a royal sorcerer, though he's heard whispers of royal sorcerers being intrigued by Kunon's magical prowess. Kunon conjures a magical cat, offering his father a real one, confident it wouldn't be any trouble for him. His father politely declines, saying a living cat would only distract him from work. Kunon playfully suggests using the Gurian duchy's wealth to gather all the cute cats in the world, but his father laughs, reminding him how much his mother, Tina, loves dogs and would never allow a cat in their home. Curious, his father asks why Kunon is so fond of cats. Kunon explains that he finds them graceful and mentions how both Aiko and Mirika view them as status symbols, often kept by aristocrats. His father, amused, shares that he's never liked having cats indoors, but knows Mirika seems to favor it. Reflecting on his own life, Kunon's father regrets that his busy childhood and adulthood left little time for joys like hobbies, unlike Kunon with his magical black kitten. He wonders if Tina would even approve of keeping one, half joking that she might suspect something unusual about his sudden interest. Arriving at the palace, Kunon's father asks him to wait while he handles royal matters. Kunon offers to leave the magical kitten in the carriage, but his father hesitates, knowing that releasing the magic would make the cat disappear. Holding it close, he feels its warmth, knowing the charming creature is only temporary. Stepping out of the carriage, Urizen, Kunon's father, greets Princess Leisha, who welcomes them warmly. He bows, apologizing for their lateness. Leisha, the second princess and a royal sorcerer, smiles when she sees the black cat, but when Urizen explains it's a magical creation, the illusion vanishes. Impressed, Leisha praises Kunon's skill. He introduces himself humbly, and Leisha notes his poise and talent, growing more impressed by him. Leisha explains she's there to escort Kunon to the Black Tower for his test. Kunon's father grants permission but reminds him they should return together, especially since they plan to meet Princess Mirika and Lady Tina later. Embarrassed, Urizen tries to end the conversation, but Kunon jokes that a nice restaurant reservation would help him win Lady Tina's heart. On their way to the Black Tower, Leisha asks about Kunon's health, and he reassures her that uneven ground is his only challenge. As she begins explaining the test's significance, Kunon eagerly interrupts, brimming with excitement over advanced magical theories and eager to explore deeper sorcery concepts. Leisha, impressed by his knowledge, ponders that his magical talent is why a royal sorcerer has been assigned to him. However, she apologizes for not talking about his interest. Seeing Kunon's disappointment, she mentions that Mirika specifically asked her to look after him, which cheers him up. Leisha is pleased to see how fond he is of Mirika, relieved that their bond is strong. Leisha shifts the conversation to the royal family's history and internal power struggles. While the first princess is usually heir to the throne, merit and achievements, especially in sorcery, can change that. With 3 princesses now possessing magical abilities, those competing for the crown seek the strongest sorcerers to back them. Leisha pauses, telling Kunon that Mirika fears he might get caught in these political battles. However, Kunon, suddenly distracted, looks down at the ground in surprise. Leisha, confused by his reaction, asks what's wrong. Kunon, with excitement in his voice, points out that he's been sliding effortlessly on a thin layer of ice created by water balls that he notices beneath his shoes. His discovery leaves Leisha astonished, further proving that Kunon's magic is far more advanced than she had anticipated. Leisha, visibly puzzled, asks him to hold off on his excitement and let her finish their conversation. But Kunon, filled with energy, playfully invites her to slide on the ice with him, complimenting her beauty by saying that it would be a joy to glide alongside someone as lovely as her. Leisha, a bit flustered, firmly warns him not to get carried away with fantasies. She offers her assistance as his guard, but advises that if something unusual happens, Kunon will need to handle it himself. While they chat, the pair glide through the royal palace, chased by guards as a young child zips past them at lightning speed. Both Leisha and Kunon are dragged outside, leaving them in awe at the child's incredible speed. Kunon, stunned, remarks on the sheer velocity, to which Leisha, equally astonished, agrees. Upon arriving at the Black Tower, all eyes turn to Kunon. Rondamond, the Royal Sorcerer Commissioner and the head of the Royal Sorcerer, greets him warmly, impressed by Kunon's presence. As Kunon observes the people in the tower, he notices that they all radiate with an intense concentration of magical power. Kunon thanks Rondamond for his time and apologizes for any trouble caused, but the commissioner, with a light-hearted laugh, assures him that they were eager to meet Kunon. Curious, he asks about Kunon's crest, to which Kunon reveals it is on his left shoulder. When Rondamond inquires if Kunon has 2 stars, Kunon grows puzzled. The commissioner explains that Kunon will learn more about the 5 ranks of sorcerer crests once he enters the sorcery school, though Kunon corrects him, saying there are 7 types of crests. Rondamond clarifies that while 7 crests exist, there are only 5 ranks within them. Kunon, trying to understand, asks if having 2 stars means he is ranked 2nd from the bottom. Rondamond explains that most sorcerers bear 2 stars, including both Leisha and himself. The commissioner further elaborates that ranks have nothing to do with talent, but rather the amount of magical power one possesses. He reassures Kunon that ongoing research on crests and magical power might uncover other distinctions. Amused by Kunon's questioning, he finds it interesting when Kunon suggests that his magic power feels so intense it could be a higher level. With a smile, Kunon makes a playful comparison, saying if he and Leisha are like store-bought cheese, then the commissioner is like an obsessively crafted blue cheese, though he admits it's a smelly analogy. Kunon, however, persists, asking if the commissioner's blue cheese comparison means he has 3 stars. With a laugh, Rondimond warns Kunon to stop with the cheese jokes or he'll get angry next time. He then proudly reveals that he's actually a 4-star sorcerer. As the commissioner's frustration grows, Leisha quickly steps in to calm the situation, explaining that Kunon likely has no idea just how rare a 4-star sorcerer it is. The commissioner relaxes, pointing out that Kunon will soon understand the significance. Rondimond, filled with excitement, stands and declares it's time for Kunon's test, gathering the students for the event. Kunon, familiar with 2 spells, Aori, Water Ball, and A-Rub, Cleaning Bubble, watches nervously as Victor, the commissioner's assistant, summons several water balls. Anxiety builds as Kunon is instructed to take control of them with his magic.
Here I am, know it's been a while. I was in denial about my love. Here I stand, I know I walked away.